As I read through the Bible in my personal devotions, as I noted, I read 3 chapters of the Old Testament and 1 chapter in the New Testament. I just move my bookmark forward as I go through the year. And this morning I read 1 Samuel chapters 4 through 6. Now, the first 12 chapters of Samuel are really about the transition from the leadership of Eli, who was the high priest, where the tabernacle was in Shiloh, and also functioned as a judge or the leader of the nation at that point, transition from him to the leadership of Samuel, who functions as the last of the judges before the rise of the monarchy. Eli is presented as a vacillating man who seemed to waver between a faithfulness that's demonstrated a couple of times in his willingness to submit to God, and unfaithfulness that's demonstrated clearly in his unwillingness to discipline his sons for their immorality and their unethical behavior. And Samuel is raised up in these chapters to be the judge and the prophet who will replace Eli and will anoint the first 2 kings. In chapter 3, God begins to work in and through Samuel, so that it says in verse 20, all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established as judge and prophet. Then we read in chapters 4 through 6 of the event that really is going to cement that, and it's going to end the leadership of Eli and his sons, and will lead eventually to the monarchy. That event is the capture of the Ark of the Covenant by the Philistine army. And it comes about this way. The Philistines attacked Israel. They were a Canaanite tribe that remained in the land and were not subdued finally until David became king. Israel loses the first battle with the Philistines, and because they're scared that they're going to be destroyed, they tell the 2 sons of the high priest to go and get the Ark of the Covenant out of the most holy place in the tabernacle and bring it into the battle. Now, if you don't know, the Ark of the Covenant is a gold-covered chest with hammered gold angels that are affixed to the end of the chest, and they rise up over the chest so that their wings touch. And it represents the throne of God. It may represent God sitting on the cherubim with his feet on the top or the cover of the chest, which is called the mercy seat. And sometimes it seems to be described in that way in the Old Testament. But the Ark of the Covenant is the most holy object in Israel's worship, and it is kept in the inner room of the tabernacle, the most holy place, in utter darkness, where only the high priest can go 1 day a year on the Day of Atonement to sprinkle the blood of atonement on the mercy seat. And what they do is they go in and they take that out of the tabernacle and carry it onto the battlefield. Now, it's evident that what they are doing is treating the Ark of the Covenant as though it were some kind of talisman or lucky charm that they can bring in to help them out of their troubles because it's magical in some way. And yet the book of Judges reveals that regardless of the fact that they take the Ark of the Covenant, they are in fact living immoral lives. The whole nation is unethical in their behavior. And in fact, the mantra of the book of Judges is still true, that everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And God sees the behavior. He sees the heart. He is not some kind of charm that we can use to make our troubles go away. So in battle, the Philistines win overwhelmingly, and Eli and Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are killed in battle, and Eli himself dies in a spasm of grief. And the remainder of the story is about how the ark fared in the Philistine territory. The Philistines take it to one of their cities and put it in the house of their gods, and they become afraid because every morning they wake up and their gods are laying face down on the ground in front of the Ark of the Covenant as though they are in worship. And then the nation of the Philistines, the cities, begin to experience what seems to be something like bubonic plague spread by mice, and they have certain tumors on their skin, which the plague brings. And so in fear, they voluntarily return the ark to Israel. Now, the point of the story is clearly that God is not some kind of lucky charm. He's not a heavenly rabbit's foot that you pull out. He's not magic in some way to make your difficulties go away. And you can't, just by bringing some holy object out, you can't induce God to do anything for you. God created you for himself, just like he created the people of Israel, the people of God, ourselves today. He created us for himself and for his glory. And the way that we show our dependence on him is by speaking of him and speaking to him with a reverent and surrendered heart that is reflected in a life of principled obedience. And God's way of overcoming his people's wayward hearts and of reducing us to teachability, well, his way in the Old Testament at this point was to give them a king, David, who would live for God in front of them. He would teach them to worship. He would teach them his word and what it means to live it. And David is simply a type of Jesus Christ. He was an imperfect example that we find fulfilled in David's greater son, the Messiah, the Lord Jesus Christ, who was anointed at his baptism by the final prophet, John the Baptist. And God has given to us a king to reduce our wayward hearts to teachability. We can't go to God and look to him as some kind of magical thing. We go to God and we trust him to lead and guide us and to work in our lives. And we seek to be his worshipers. Let's do that together, even though we're divided in our homes today.